Cold weather is moderating, but new threats are looming on the horizon. Heavy rain, wind, ice jams, and the return of the atmospheric river. We'll dive into all the details, plus a look at the long range and a special edition of Cold Rain's Tip of the Day. So stay tuned, don't change that channel. A new episode of Cold Rain's Weather World starts right now. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another special edition of Cold Rain's Weather World. It's a special edition because it's a special day. This is the day that the Lord has made, and we will rejoice and be glad in it. That sounds kind of like a song, but here at Cold Rain's Weather World, we rejoice in every day that we can get up and take a breath and look outside and see whatever the weather brings to us is a joyful day, and we will praise the Lord for that. And if you're new to the channel, welcome. We talk about current weather, we talk about upcoming weather events that are going to happen, and maybe a few other things along the way. So we're glad to have you here. Please consider hitting the subscribe button, hit the like button, and turn on those notifications so that you're notified when new videos drop. And also leave a comment in the comments section. It can be a question about the show, a suggestion for the show, a question about weather or me, or even a prayer request. We take prayer requests here and we want to pray for you if there's something going on. So please consider leaving a prayer request if there's something that we can pray over for you. So with that, we are going to go on ahead and take a look at our trivia question, as we always do. And then we'll talk about the agenda for the day. And by the way, I will have the agenda in the comments section, or the description section of the video rather, and I will list out the timestamp. So if you want to skip on ahead to something that's important to you, you can do that. But if you stick around for the whole show, you might just find some things that you didn't know before. You might learn some new things, and you might have some fun, because we do some fun things and some unexpected things sometimes here at Cold Rain's Weather World. So with that, our trivia question for the day is, what is the term for the point at which air becomes saturated and condensation begins? Is it A, the dew point, B, relative humidity, C, wet bulb temperature, or D, heat index? If you know the answer, put it in the comment section. I suspect many of you do, but we will take a look at the answer at the end of the show. So what do we have on the docket for today, folks? Well, we're going to take a quick look at the weather roundup, satellite radar, current temperatures. Then we're going to take a look at the upcoming temperatures over the weekend into early next week. And then we're going to spend the bulk of the time talking about the main weather event. That's the big show up in the Pacific Northwest. You can actually see on this satellite image already one storm system about to work into the Pacific Northwest, and that's going to just continue over the next few days. We've got a few systems that are going to impact the area with heavy rain, strong winds, high mountain snows, even the threat of ice jams. So we're going to talk about that. Then we're going to look at the long range and kind of wrap up there. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it today because it looks a little bit pretty much the same as it has the last couple of days, but we'll poke around and look at a couple of interesting things that I'm seeing there in the long range. And then we'll wrap up with the trivia question and the special Cold Rain's Tip of the Day. Now, you're not going to want to miss that, so stick around and we'll get to it. So taking a look at our satellite picture, nothing too scary out here. The storm system that impacted the East Coast is long gone. Still a few clouds up here. And so we've got a little moisture streaming in out of the Gulf of Cold Rain down here, and moisture coming in off Texas. But these are just high clouds, not really dropping. There's a little bit of precipitation here, but it's not anything too scary, nothing to worry about. And then we've got the big storm system about ready to move on into Washington State and Oregon. So that's our satellite imagery. If we go over here to the radar, we're going to take a look here and see again, and not anything too major here. East of Denver, spreading into Kansas, some very light rain down here in southern Texas, and then over toward the Ohio Valley and some of the Great Lakes, you've got a little bit of maybe light precipitation here. Nothing too major that's going on. So we're not really worried about any big weather events here, and that's nice. We're going to dry out a little bit, maybe warm up over the next few days. Very nice break, maybe a false spring. We'll stay with us. We'll see, but it's going to feel good, and we'll get a nice break after the really long period of active cold weather that we've seen over the last couple of days. So I'm going to scroll out here so you can kind of see the whole map. And as you can see, you got to way up here into northern Canada, near the Arctic Circle before you start to find those purple colors that were all the way down here yesterday. So, folks in the United States, particularly the upper plains and heartland region, are breathing a sigh of relief this morning. So we can kind of move this map around. But look, Bismarck, 6 degrees above zero. Yesterday were minus 24 when I was doing the video. Minneapolis +9, Sioux Falls 4, Rapid City 26, 19 in Chicago, Washington, DC 28, Charlotte 32. So we've got much warmer conditions, if you want to call it that. A balmy 32 in Atlanta, but I know it feels a lot better than the well below zero numbers that we were seeing yesterday. Wind chills, still chilly. I mean, we're looking at minus 13. That's better than minus 50, but I mean, you're minus 13. Stay inside if you can. It's very cold. Wind chills still blowing. The wind's still blowing around these areas, and so it's going to create some low wind chills. But that's going to abate over the next couple of days, and so we'll see that. So that's very good. That this is kind of moving out and moderating, and so with that, we're going to take a look here at our high temperatures forecast for the next couple of days. So this is your high temperature forecast for today. So we're looking at still below freezing, but that area is less up here in the upper plains and into the heartland region here, and then southeast we're looking we're going to be in the 30s and the 40s for a good portion of the southeast, a little chillier up in the northeast. If we slide this along to day 2, you can see that moderating trend continue to happen. You're starting to see some oranges and yellows poke in here. Florida, the desert Southwest, out here in Southern California, southern Arizona into New Mexico, really starting to warm up. And you can see that trend really take over in earnest as we get on into Sunday. Look at that, 60s all the way up into Kansas now, up into actually South Dakota. So wow, southeast still hanging on to the 50s, but that's going to change too. So we're getting up into the 60s, moderating trend. This just continues on into Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then the cold, we get a little cold shot up here in the northern Great Lakes. So that is your 7-day temperature forecast. Again, the theme is moderation and quiet. There's not going to be a lot going on except up here in the Pacific Northwest. So taking a look here at our hazards map, you can see there's not a lot going on here, just some, leftover, watches and warnings out here. This were, not watches, but these are flooding areas where you've had excessive rain and then some snow on top of that that's going to melt, and so you've got some river flood warnings still in effect in these areas up in Kentucky, down even into Arkansas. But then over here you've got high winds that are going to affect this areas from the 23rd to the 24th. Heavy snow possible up here in the northern Cascades. Heavy precipitation, mix of snow at the lower elevations, 6,000 feet and lower. You're going to see mostly rain. Above that, you're going to expect some snow, and then heavy rain moving into the Pacific Northwest as well. So this is your day 3 through 7 Weather Prediction Center hazards map. Now, we're looking at potentially excessive rain in some of these areas. So some of these areas are going to get between 3 and 8 inches of rain. Of course, the mountains, the Olympics, and then into the Cascades, in the coastal range. I mean, you're going to see where the higher peaks are. They tend to squeeze the moisture out, so you're going to see higher precipitation amounts, and then of course above 6,000 feet up to 10,000 feet or so, you're going to see some snow and heavy snow at that. So that's your hazard or your excessive rain potential, and we're going to take a look at that. It's day 2, day 3, about the same area. Day 4, pretty much confined to the coastal areas, and then everything's out by day 5, and it starts to quiet down. So looking at the satellite picture, what's driving this? So you get this big comma shape here. This is a low pressure within a front extending down. This is moving in. We'll put this into motion. We can kind of see how this plays out. But here's number 1, system number 1 here. Let me get my pen on here. We'll draw something. I haven't drawn in a couple of days. It's time to draw. So you got this comma shape, big low pressure that's kind of moving in this way, and it's counterclockwise spin. But you've got a front that extends down this way. This second storm is out here. Third storm is out here behind, and you've got some more energy coming in. So all of this is just directed in like this. And so we'll erase that. But you've got this big atmospheric river.
Weather. Oh boy. Yep, they're calling it an atmospheric river. It is coming down.
So Dr. Rick says we shouldn't talk about the atmospheric river, but cold rain's giving you permission to do it just this one time. But the atmospheric river, so it's just a big series of storms. The jet stream, we'll take a look at the jet here in a minute, but it's just pointed right here in this area up toward the Pacific Northwest. And so we're getting storm system after storm system just pounding the same areas. And that's what we tend to call an atmospheric river, when the jet sort of stays in place and it just sends activity after activity, all of these moisture-laden storms, and they affect the same area, and you get these big rainfall totals. And so here is our jet stream pattern. This is the hemispheric view. We've been looking at this occasionally the last few days because we've been paying attention to how this is poking in toward the United States. And over time, if we look at this, this is the 6Z European model run from early this morning. And watch this as we put it into motion. So you can see, pay particular attention down here to the Pacific Northwest. And you can see the big jet out in the Pacific. It is just a long jet extension here, but look what happens as it sort of approaches the United States. You get little pieces that sort of break off. It doesn't quite extend all the way, but the energy in the jet continues to move forward, and then they just one after another just hits the Pacific Northwest. There's one, there's another one, there comes another one in, and so we're looking, several days of activity out here, and then eventually over time you can start to get a ridge going up. And when you get ridges, you tend to see high pressure domes kind of underneath those ridges, and you'll get much more in the way of fair weather. So we're going to have a high pressure ridge that eventually works in here by Tuesday, Wednesday of next week, and sort of blocks all of this from coming in, and you start to dry out a little bit. So that's what we're looking for on over toward the end of maybe the end of the work week next week. But yeah, it's going to dry out up there. And so you got that ridge that'll poke up. And when that ridge goes up, what happens? Cold air. You start to see cold air plunge out of the Arctic. And so, boom, that's what we're going to start to see. And we're going to look at that in our forecast, our upcoming pattern talk in a minute. But that ridge will help to establish a little bit of a cold air feed. And we'll talk about that in a moment. Now, looking at the European model precipitation, sort of the surface precipitation types as we go out in time, you can see as we get into Friday evening, all is well. But then, as we approach Friday evening, you're starting to see, actually that was earlier in the day Friday, this is Friday evening, so you're starting to see rain breaking out over the Olympics, and then you come in here, boom, everybody starts to rain and snow. Get this big batch of rain coming in. The snow elevation is going to go up as warm air kind of comes in off the Pacific. So above 6,000 feet, we're looking at snow. Below that, it's going to be rain. And then going on forward, you see the next big system coming in as we get into Saturday, then into Sunday, just buckets of rain falling down. Several inches are going to fall in here. Snow's kind of non-existent in this area right now. Back over into Idaho and Montana and the higher peaks there, you're going to see snow really coming down, and it's going to pile up, feet of snow we're talking about. And so as we go over time, you see that out into Monday, into Tuesday, another system kind of comes in. This one sort of shunts off up here into southwestern Canada. Snow levels drop back down as a cold front kind of comes down. The cold air starts to work in, and you get snow piling up in the Cascades again. And so that rain continues on through into Wednesday, another last little shot of it, and then boom, that ridge goes up and high pressure works in, and we're done. But what does that leave us with here? So we're looking at heavy precipitation. Look, these big kind of brown colors, that's close to 10 inches of rain. So up in the higher peaks, again, they're squeezing out the atmosphere for all they can, and you get these higher rainfall totals here. Big rain in between, though. You're still looking at 2, 3, 4, 5 inches down here in Seattle, down in Portland, in areas along the east or the western portions of Washington and Oregon. And then you get over here in the lee of the mountain. This is what happens to me in North Carolina. You get to the lee of the mountains, and you get downsloping, and you get this sort of little shadow here that's going on. You don't get that much precipitation. Downsloping dries, upsloping condenses and lifts the air, and you squeeze precipitation out, and you kind of see that effect going on back over here in the higher peak. So that's your precipitation forecast over the next 7 days. Again, this is the European model. Most models kind of show this is where the big footprint of rain is going to be in this area here. Grab the pen and just kind of draw it. But most models are showing This is your big rainfall totals, snow up here in the higher peaks. And what's going to happen too, by the way, this is going to be it's going to be flooding rains. So there are flash flood watches up. There are hydrologic statements that are up for heavy rain. Read those if you go to your National Weather Service offices. You can read that stuff and get a good handle on it. And then over here is our snowfall map. So what I was going to say, what's going to happen is you've got a lot of snow up in the higher peaks of these mountains. As the temperature lower or is increased with some of this milder air, some of that's going to melt and it's going to break off. You're going to get these what's called ice jams, and so ice jam is just essentially ice forms and it jams up the river. It sort of acts as a natural dam, and so some of the frozen areas where you've got a lot of snow, a lot of ice, that's going to work into your river basin. It's going to freeze up or dam up some of those rivers potentially and create some additional flooding. So all that rain's going to run off, all that melt's going to run off, and you're going to get potential for ice jams as well. That's going to exacerbate any flooding that happens. So we don't talk a lot about that. That doesn't happen often in many parts of the country, so we don't hear about it or talk about it. But that's kind of what happens there. I'm not sure I did the best job of explaining it, but you sort of get the idea. It creates a sort of an ice dam in a river, backs up the river. So anyway, that's what we're looking at for snowfall totals. Most of this is, again, confined to the higher peaks. Feet of snow, 40 inches up here in this area, and then down here we're a little bit less, but we still got plenty of snowfall, 1 to 2 feet. And then finally, the wind element. So there's going to be windy too. I mean, these storms tend to bring in a lot of wind. Most of the heavy wind or the strongest wind is going to be confined to the coast. So we've sort of put this into motion. Don't fall in love with the wind maps that these models put out. They tend to be overdone, but it does give you a good idea. So these storms come in, could gust to 40, 50 miles, particularly along the coastal areas. Then, over the coastal range mountains, you get a little bit of a wind break, but it's still going to be windy in these areas. So I'd be prepared for some gusty winds, some power outages. See the next system coming on in, some stronger winds with it. And this when you get on out here, the last system that's just showing, this is way out in time, right? This is Monday, so maybe this lessens over time. But then anyway, you can kind of see that roll in there and then calms down as that ridge builds in. So be prepared for heavy rain, lots of snow, potentially ice jams in some of the higher elevations, particularly back into Idaho, Montana, and then windy, as I said, windy conditions, and that'll kind of calm down as we get past day 6 or so. All right, we are flying today, folks. We're going to end the show today with a look at the long range, and what I'm showing you here is the European ensemble. This is at hour 144, so that's excuse me. This is next Wednesday evening, and so we are rolling this map forward, and look what we see here. We see a little bit of blocking over the pole. We see a big anomaly up here. This is not good if you want an East Coast snowstorm, but it still can help provide a good, a cold feed the central and the eastern part of the country as this works down. Look at this ridge out here in the west. We talked about this big ridge kind of going up like this. If it were to connect with this, boy, we'd have a big Arctic feed. But this ridge is a positive PNA that's going to allow Canadian cold air to come down here like this. And so we're going to see that play out as we put this map into motion. And so this is 144 hours out. So look at that. Boom, that ridge goes up. What happens? Trough in the east. Big, and it's kind of a storm signal here too. So you're probably looking at some precipitation along the southeast up into the mid-Atlantic here with this. If these big anomalies kind of line up and get together, you could have a big storm out here, but we'll see. I mean, that's way out in time. And then we go on out, and you can see this is way up in the upper atmosphere, by the way. I'm showing 500 millibars. It's about 18,000 feet. And so that helps to influence the weather at the surface as we continue to talk about that every day, because there are new members and people may not know about that. But that's what happens. And then look what happens when we get out here to 216 hours out. So I'm kind of watching two periods, the 8 to 11 day period for an East Coast potentially winter storm. Probably the first something in that 8 to 11 day period. You're probably talking about somewhere maybe up into the northeast to the lower mid-Atlantic. Somewhere in here probably is your best target for that if you're looking at the East Coast. Now, of course, back in this area here, we could definitely see an extension of that too. But that's probably my first target area that I'm paying attention to in the 8 to 11 day time frame. Now, the next sort of potential, and the European kind of uh, doesn't show this quite as well as what I'm thinking might happen here. We get out into 252 hours, 264, 280, and then we get over here into let's call it March the 5th, March 5th, March 6th. We've still got this big ridge out west. Look at that. It's just I can't get my pen today. Going up like this. This is how you draw a ridge in meteorological terms. Troughs kind of you do that. But anyway, ridge going up, you get this big cold air feed coming out. The steeper this ridge is, the stronger that cold air feed is going to be. And so we're getting cold air here in the east. What I'm looking for is some of the models are showing several pieces of energy kind of vertically stacked. So we have southern branch, we have a northern branch, and then we have an Arctic branch, and where where those elements of energy kind of come together, they can line up and create a very deep trough, and at the base of that trough is where you would find a storm system developing, and all of that energy kind of merging together would create a really significant storm along the coast. So later on down the line, it may be possible, depending on how the pattern shakes out, that areas in and around here could be in the game too, as well as up into the northeast. So we're really watching this as we go forward. So this is somewhere in the 12 to 15 day time frame that we'll call it. Just keep an eye out for that period. Let's see if we are onto something here. We'll watch the models develop over the next couple of days. Here is your European ensemble mean 850 temperature anomaly, and look at this. So we're at 7 days out. We're going to go on out into time here and take a look at how this develops. So you get this big anomaly down here. This is -7, -8 below normal at 850. That's going to translate to cooler surface temperatures. What we really want to see, if we want to see snow this far south, is we need some purples down here. So we're going to, 5, 6, 7, 8, even 10 degrees below normal still puts you in the 40s. And so we want to see temperatures go into the 30s, 20s, something along those lines, and to get a nice snow event. And so there are other things that sort of play into that too. We're not going to get into all of that. But if we roll this forward out through the end of the 15-day period, we got just cold shot after cold shot kind of in the east. You get this little moderation burst. This is European ensemble mean, so it's possible that some of these cold anomalies may end up being a little stronger than this. This is a mean of 51 members, and so they average it out. But look at that. So green coming into the northeast, boom, off over into the northeast, and we still have colder than normal over much of the nation. And this will be reflected at the surface as well. So I wanted to show this. This is an average map of the normal high temperatures, and as you can see, over the south part of the country, the southern part of the country, for high temperatures, we're looking generally 40 to 50s in this area here. So again, this as you go through February into March, this is just increasing and increasing. So you need deeper shots and stronger shots of cold air to get wintry weather down here. The purple area is essentially freezing to 40, so look at that. And then above, so we'll just continue to draw that. And then above this line, little more, it's a little easier to get frozen precipitation because your average temperature, this is average high and low for the day. Okay, so this is your average temperature for the day, factoring in the highest and the lowest temperature. And so anything above the pink here is game on for any kind of frozen precipitation. You're looking at average highs, 20 to 32. So there you go. And I think, by the way, this graph, I think, is what it's doing is just kind of giving you a range here. So that's how that plays out. So just keep that in your mind when you start to see anomaly maps and temperature maps on social media. Just know where your averages are, and you know that you need, further south you go, you need stronger negative anomalies in order to support wintry precipitation. So the last thing we're going to show here is the European AI model. This scores pretty well. And so if we get out here to 198, look, we've got this big height anomaly here representing what potentially could be some sort of a storm along the East Coast, depending on how this sets up. So again, favorite areas up into the Northeast, upper Mid-Atlantic maybe. But this sort of brings it down a little bit farther to the south as it winds up. But if we look out here now, this is what I was showing you before. Look at this. 3 areas of energy kind of in the jet. You got, one up here, one here, one down here. So this shows that pretty well. They're not quite aligned in a proper alignment to really converge and merge into a substantial trough. This thing's scooting out of the way. This thing's back here. This one's coming in, and it's sort of acting as a kicker to pound this one forward. So that's what happens if we go on out and put this a little farther into motion. You can kind of see you get a big trough here, big ridge going up. It's going to be colder than normal here. If we looked at the anomaly map, we'd see that, and then boom. So rolling that on out, European AI, this is a 6Z run. It just, here's another little system in the southern stream coming by. So it's an active pattern. It takes back over again, colder in the east, and we'll just have to see if we can line things up for a big storm. So I'm watching that. I wanted you to know it because that's what I'm watching it. And then this is the vorticity map. So this represents the actual energy. We saw the blues. They do a fairly good job of showing you where the energy is. But this is the actual energy map. And so this is areas of spin in the upper atmosphere, which contributes to rain, precipitation, snow, ice, all of the above. And you can see here's one, here's one, here's one over here. And so we want these kind of more aligned like that to really bomb out a storm. And they're not there, but they're close. I mean, this is pretty far out. This is Monday, in the Monday, Tuesday range, March 3rd and 4th. So there you have it. That's what I'm looking at. I wanted you to see it too. And so that is your long range wrap up. It looks like after a nice little break, few days of warmer temperatures, quieter weather, that's going to change back to a much more wintry pattern. The MJO, we've talked about that, is kind of sticking in the cool phases. That's going to help. And so we'll see how it shakes out, but that's where we stand today. So that brings us to today's trivia question and tip of the day. We're going to start with the tip of the day. This comes from George Washington, of all people. And this is from George Washington's little book here. Let me get on the screen so I can make sure I'm holding this up in front of the camera the way I want. This is George Washington's rules. What does it say here? That's got a long title. Rules of Civility and Decent Behavior in Company and Conversation. As you can see, it's got lots of good little tidbits of information. So what I wanted to read to you today, and this is a very good rule of thumb. I want you to remember this and carry it with you. All right, so rule number 7. There are a lot of these rules. There are, over 100. Put not off your clothes in the company of others, nor go out of your chamber half dressed. Okay, that's a good rule to live by. Hey, also I'll give you one more. This is a bonus. So keep your clothes on, people. And then number 12 is a good one too. Shake not the head, feet, or legs. Roll not the eyes. Lift not one eyebrow higher than the other. Mr. Spock would not have done very well if he was trying to adhere to these rules. Okay, what else we got here? Okay, wry not the mouth. And bedew no man's face with your spittle by approaching too near him when you speak. Okay, so for all you close talkers out there, remember George Washington's rule number 12. It's right here. Pick up this book. It's not very expensive. It's fun to read. And make sure you use a breath mint and bedew no person's face with your spittle when you talk, okay? So swallow all that down before you give somebody a nice a soliloquy on whatever it is that you want to talk about today. And so with that, hope that's helpful. We'll wrap up with our trivia question. So what is the term for the point at which cold air is not in the trivia question? What is the term for the point at which air becomes saturated and condensation begins? I should probably rewrite these before I go. So what is that term? Dew point, relative humidity, wet bulb, temperature, or heat index? And the answer is the dew point. Of course it is. Our dew point, if you take the amount of water vapor that's in the atmosphere and you cool the atmosphere down, cooler air holds less moisture than warmer air. And so keep that in mind. So if you cool the atmosphere and the amount of water vapor in the atmosphere doesn't change, at some point, because of what I just said a while ago, that's going to fully saturate the air. You're going to get to 100%, cool it, A little beyond that, boom, dew pops out and forms all over everything. And so that's your dew point. Now, what is relative humidity? Well, that's just a measure of the amount of water vapor that's currently in the air. When it's 40%, it feels, if in the summertime, that feels pretty good because it's dry. When it gets up to 70 or 80%, it feels kind of sticky outside and yucky, and you don't want to be out there. But the relative humidity is just a measure of that. The wet bulb temperature, so what's that? That is, I should wait for a trivia question for that, but I'm going to go ahead and give it to you today for free here at Cold Rains Weather World. So don't ever say you didn't get anything. The wet bulb temperature is if we were to take the current atmosphere with whatever relative humidity it is, say 50%, how much water vapor could be added to this to the atmosphere? And we look at this. I'm not doing a good job of explaining this. Let me start over. So you take your current atmosphere, you know the temperature of it, you know how much moisture content is in it. If you start to drop precipitation into it, that precipitation is going to evaporate. And as that evaporation process takes place, the atmosphere becomes more saturated and your temperature drops because evaporation is a cooling process. When you get out of the shower, before you dry off, it kind of feels cool, or out, you get out of a pool, it starts to feel cool, kind of cool. It's because you're starting to evaporate water off your skin. It cools you down. And so the same thing happens in the atmosphere. It cools the atmosphere down. And as the atmosphere cools down, as precipitation is falling into it, the moisture content is coming up. Those two things are going to meet at a specific temperature. That is your wet bulb temperature. And in the wintertime, especially in the southeast, we look at this with cold air damming situations. If your wet bulb temperature is above freezing, then you don't have to worry about freezing rain, or really probably or too much sleet or snow. If your wet bulb temperature is below freezing, then you have much more of a concern for freezing rain here in the southeast. And that obviously works for everywhere else too, but we get a lot of icing events here because we're east of the Appalachian Mountains, and we'll talk about that another time. So with that wraps the show up today. I hope you've had a good time. We kind of flew through a lot of stuff today, but anyway, I hope you learned a few things and had some fun. And so we'll be back tomorrow with another quick episode. We actually might not be back tomorrow with another quick episode. We actually might be back on Sunday with a quick episode. Got a lot going on this weekend, but I'll keep you updated if anything changes. Well, that sound means, unfortunately, our time is at an end. So I will bid you farewell. And remember, if you didn't like the weather that you saw today, there's another model out there with better weather on it just for you. It's your job to go find it. Take care, everybody. Have a great day, and we'll see you back soon.